For the animation workflow part of this lecture, I've chosen a piece of dialogue to animate to.
Are we taking this too far? You know what? I don't think we're taking this far enough. What?
So that's a piece of dialogue from the show The Office, spoken by Rashida Jones. And I like this piece of dialogue because you could interpret it a few different ways. You could play it a few different ways. I think the reading is close enough to neutral in some places where I could play her more angry or more incredulous or more sincere. I also like that there's some empty spaces in the dialogue where she's not talking, where I can add a little bit of thought process. I interpret it that there's basically three different phrases or attitudes or beats to the scene. There's the first part where she says, "Are we taking this too far?" There's a second part where she changes her attitude and says, "You know what, I don't think we're taking this far enough." And finally there's the beat at the end where she says, "What?" As if she's responding to someone questioning her or watching her. So that gives me the opportunity to play three distinct attitudes, possibly more, but I think three will be plenty. Maybe I could even do it in two, we'll see. And from there, I've gone ahead and drawn some thumbnails of how I might want to stage this scene. I've got an idea for how this might play out. So I was thinking the idea for the scene is that she's at the supermarket and she's hoarding a lot of toilet paper. Seems like a timely topic. So maybe we start on a close-up shot of her and she's on the phone. I kind of like the idea of her talking on the phone to somebody rather than talking to somebody next to her. I think it makes the staging simpler, and I can focus just on a close-up of her face, and we don't expect to hear the other person. So I thought I could do a two-shot scene where the first shot is just a tight shot of her talking on her cell phone, and then after she says, "I don't think we've gone far enough," we can cut to a wide shot and kind of reveal the gag of the situation, that she's at a supermarket with a shopping cart just full to the brim of toilet paper and empty shelves next to her because she's taken the last of the toilet paper. You know, maybe there's a second person sort of off to the side. Maybe we just see over the shoulder on them, we see their back. And that's the person that she's addressing when she says "what," as if someone is kind of watching at her, you know, questioning her actions, and she's kind of blowing them off. So yeah, I think it's a pretty simple staging solution. You know, the first one's pretty simple close-up. The second shot, the more establishing shot, it becomes a question of, well, how do I stage the toilet paper for maximum clarity but still be able to see her reaction, so it continues across the cut, and introduce a second person in there without giving the audience too much information to react to. Maybe I can do it more in 3/4 like this, or maybe it's more of a profile shot with the cart against the empty shelves like this. Maybe I want to include the action of her like throwing the last package of toilet paper into her cart to kind of reinforce what she's doing in the scene. The second person could be somebody standing in front of her cart with their arms crossed, or it could be like a child just kind of standing off to the side and observing her. Maybe it's even her child. I don't know. There's a lot of different ways to spin this, a lot of different nuances we can give it depending on the staging choices. And I think some of that I'll just work out in the 3D scene. I'll go ahead and assemble the assets that I need for the scene, the props, the sets, the characters and stuff. And then from there I can kind of play around with staging a little more and see what's going to feel like the best solution. Here's some video reference I shot to try out different acting ideas and different prop interactions.
Are we taking this too far? You know what? I don't think we're taking this far enough. What?
So I've shot about 5 minutes of video of myself acting this out in the kitchen, trying to get the props and the sets as close to reality as possible. Of course, I'm in quarantine, so I can't go to an actual supermarket, and I don't have a shopping cart, but in this case, a chair was close enough to a shopping cart, and I had my phone and some rolls of toilet paper, which is also very lucky. In this case, I'm not playing the audio track back live and trying to sync to it. I find that when I do that, I very often can't keep up with the audio track, or it feels forced. So I memorize the lines and try to perform them myself at a natural pace, just to try to make the scene feel more organic and let myself relax a little bit more. So very often the dialogue that I say ends up being a little bit too slow for the recorded track, but that's okay. I can fix that later. After I've done my recording, I take the raw footage into an editor like Final Cut Pro or Adobe Premiere, and I've edited out all the connecting bits that aren't important and just focus on the actions that I want in the scene. I've also retimed the video so that it matches the audio in the recording.
Are we taking this too far? You know what? I don't think we're taking this far enough. What? Are we taking this too far? You know what? I don't think we're taking this far enough. What?
So from there, I've decided that the first two versions are the ones I like best, and I like different things about each one of them. So I've gone ahead and comped two of them together that I can use as reference in Maya, taking little ideas from each one.
Are we taking this too far? You know what? I don't think we're taking this far enough. What?
My plan is not to use this video reference literally. I'm not going to be going through frame by frame and copying poses. I just want to get a sense of the feeling of it. I want to be inspired by some of the facial expressions, maybe some of the timing, but I'm definitely going to want to push things further, exaggerate the poses, and of course, make the facial expressions more appealing. I look nothing like the model, and I'm a middle-aged man. So there are some things that are not going to translate literally from my performance to her performance. So I'll have to make some adjustments as I go. This is really just an inspiration reel, and if I run out of ideas or if I'm not sure how to time something, it gives me a bit of a safety net. Now I've done some thumbnails of ideas for the performance, and some of these are inspired by the video reference, and some of these are just out of my head. But basically trying to assign expressions or beats of subtext to each of the three beats that I interpret in the dialogue. Beat A being, are we taking this too far? Beat B being, you know what, I don't think we're taking this far enough. And beat C being just the what? Responding to somebody else watching her. So there's a lot of different options I have to play these beats. She could start out, I like to do little thumbnail expressions. And these aren't on model. They don't necessarily look like the CG model that I'm going to use, but they're expressive enough. I can tell like what the intent is behind them. Hopefully you can tell what the intent is behind them, what the attitude is. These are more just for me to communicate to myself and kind of have a blueprint of the expressions that I want to try to hit. I've just gone through a shotgun approach of just sketching out all the ideas I could think of and assigning them adjectives to describe the subtext or the action that's going on for that beat. So, for example, maybe for the first line she's worried and introspective, but then she comes to a decision and she becomes self-assured and direct. But then when she notices somebody's watching her, she becomes self-conscious, and a little bit worried. Or the first beat she could be more mocking of the person she's talking to, like, how dare you ask me such a dumb question? And then she could get really superior and aggressive and say, no, this is how it's going to be. And then when she notices someone's watching, she could be really annoyed at them and just kind of blow them off. How else could we play it? The first beat could be more like incredulous, like, oh my God, are you serious? Are you really asking me this question? Have we gone too far? And then it's like, no, you need to listen to me. So she's kind of like, she's being really emphatic and maybe over-explaining a little bit and saying, hey, this is what we have to do. She's pleading with the person on the phone. And then maybe when she notices someone's watching, her reaction is to be more polite and kind of collect herself. So there's a nice kind of switch between those two beats. Or she could just be straight up stunned by the question, like, oh my God, I hadn't thought about that. Are we going too far? But then realizing, oh, you know what? I think this is the right thing to do. I think we haven't gone far enough, actually. So she becomes more skeptical and reasoning. But then maybe when she sees someone watching, she gets really defensive. Here's another set. She could be really sarcastic and annoyed by the question, are we taking this too far? And then getting really kind of confident and maybe even a little condescending in her response. You know what? I don't think we're taking this far enough. And that maybe it's the same attitude when she talks to the other person over there. What? So it's really only two attitudes. Maybe I modulate a little bit between B and C, but the second half of the scene is just one attitude instead of two. Maybe we only need two ideas instead of three. For this last sequence here, she's kind of wide-eyed and surprised, like, oh my God, are you kidding me? Are you asking me this? And then, like, you know what? I think this is what we need to do. Kind of cynical and like, yeah, I'm dismissing you. And then when she notices someone's watching, it's like, wait, what's going on? Why are you looking at me? So it's kind of suspicious, a little defensive. Some of these are, just as good as others. Some are stronger, some are weaker. Some of them I feel like I need to play them against the audio to see how they play with the audio. Maybe the tone isn't quite right. But I feel like I have a lot of good options here. Sometimes I'll generate as many ideas as I can, and then I find out I have too many ideas, and I like a lot of them. Here I've got 18 ideas, and I really only need 3, so how do I choose the best ones? Well, at this point, what I'd start doing is start looking at not each attitude individually, but looking at the sequence of attitudes and see how they play against each other, and where are the big changes and where are the little changes. I don't want each change between each phrase to be the same size. I don't want it to be 3 big ideas or 3 small ideas. I'd like to try to find a little variation, a little texture. So maybe the change between the first idea and the second idea is a really big change, but then the change from the second idea to the third idea is a smaller change. It's like a subtler thing. So you're comparing broad versus subtle. That's one way that I might decide to pare down my ideas, is by how they relate to each other. Also playing back the audio, listening to that on loop while I look at the images may help me decide which ones feel most natural set against that audio. I think the way I'm leaning just currently, and I may change my mind later, but I like sort of this surprised look where she's like questioning, like, are you really asking me this right now? Have we taken this too far? But then I like up here this B of confident and condescending. You know what? I don't think we've taken this far enough. So she gets really self-assured. But then I think I like the sort of suspicious-looking C there, where it's like going from that confident to like, what? Why are you judging me? Kind of thing. I think those are probably my favorite, and I think that they'll fit nicely with the dialogue. But again, I may get into the scene and decide that, it doesn't fit. And so I can always come back to these drawings, and I can always come back to my video reference and take another course of action. So I've got options, and that's great. Here's the scene I've built in Maya based on my thumbnails and the ideas that I had. I've got the Gwen model from Long Winter Studios here in a scene. I've also added some props to flesh out the idea. I've got some supermarket shelves that are now empty. I've got a shopping cart full of toilet paper, and I decided to add a kid to the foreground here, just kind of silently watching her while she's on the phone. Of course, I've added the phone model as well. And I modified a photograph for a background. I just found a really wide perspective photograph that I could match to the scene pretty easily and blur it out so it's not distracting. So here I'm going to play the layout for the 2 shots.
Are we taking this too far? You know what? I don't think we're taking this far enough. What?
So pretty simple 2-shot setup, close-up on Gwen, and then a wide shot kind of revealing the gag with all the toilet paper, the kid watching her, and I'll probably have her taking the last package of toilet paper and cramming it into her cart there as she talks on the phone, and then she says what to the kid. So that's the idea. I'm not going to go through the full process of showing you how I block the scene out, because that's not what this lecture is about. I'm talking about facial animation, so I'm going to kind of skip ahead in the process and get to the point where I would normally start posing the face somewhere during my blocking, and then we'll go from there.